says they offered people rewards to do 3 things at once.
So you had to hold information about 2 tasks while executing a 3rd one. And essentially people miserably failed at this task.
When they started a 3rd task, one of the original goals disappeared from their brains. The French team says that suggests the brain simply can't stay focused on more than 2 goals at a time. But David Meyer, who studies multitasking at the University of Michigan, isn't so sure.
I don't think there's any evidence to prove that under all conditions people can't keep 3 goals in mind. It's very important to distinguish between do not under some circumstances and cannot under any circumstances.
Meyer says the brain might respond differently if the motivation was, say, survival instead of pocket money. He's also puzzled by what he sees as a disconnect between what was happening in people's brains and what they actually did. For example, offering people more money increased their brain activity quite a bit. But Meyer says the extra brain activity didn't make people much faster or more accurate at their tasks.
The effects of these motivational manipulations on the behavior were extremely small for the most part.
Which means that we may not be much good at doing only 2 things at once, even when our brains really, really want to. A new study appears in the journal Science. John Hamilton, NPR News.
Now, the big show in the sky last night over the Midwest. Shortly after 10 p.m. Central Time, people in Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, also Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Indiana, and Michigan reported seeing a bright light streaking across the sky. Some described it as a huge fireball. We're going to hear from some witnesses now, starting with Kim Kienitz, who's a first responder in Avoca, Wisconsin.
My girlfriend Brenda and I, we were coming back from our refresher first responder class. We started coming into the town of Cobb, and we were just, casually talking, then all of a sudden the town just started getting light, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this town has got really good light. Then all of a sudden it just started getting greener and greener, like somebody just turned a button to turn up the color of green in the sky, and all of a sudden we just see this big, huge ball of fire, and it looked like a Roman candle. And my girlfriend said, no, it was a shooting star. And I'm like, no, that is not a shooting star, it's a meteorite. And she's like, well, it's the same difference.
Well, we'll hear more about what it was in a moment. Kimberly Kienitz, thanks a lot for describing that for us. On to Pete Pokrant in Madison, Wisconsin. What were you doing last night?
I happened to be lucky enough to be out walking my dog about 10 o'clock. And I saw a flash, and I looked up and noticed that the sky to the west almost looked blue. It looked like daylight. And I saw basically the same bright green flickering objects, that were like sparks seeming to come off of it. And then there were a couple of bright flashes, and it broke into several pieces. I could see 3 specific orange pieces in kind of a triangular formation. And they continued on for maybe 5 or 10 seconds, and it appeared to burn out.
Well, Mr. Pokrant, thanks so much for telling us what you saw last night. And we're going to now ask Bill Cook, whose business is, how do you describe it, space rocks?
That's correct.
At NASA, at the Marshall Space Center in Huntsville, Alabama. What did they see? What was it?
Well, what they saw was definitely a meteor, a bright meteor. We call it bolide. I checked with Stratcom, and it was definitely not a reentry of space junk. So what they saw was natural, and based on our initial energy estimates, it was a rock probably about a yard across that skimmed across the atmosphere and broke up.
Just a yard across, and bringing that much light with it.
Yes, we're not done with analysis, but right now our initial energy estimates put it at about 100 tons of TNT.
What would have happened had it gone straight down, or would it have broken apart if it had gone straight down?
Meteors this small typically are broken apart as this one. If you look at what information we have, Doppler radar picked up pieces of this meteorite descending, so you actually got echoes on Doppler radar that show the trail, and those are tiny particles of this meteorite after it broke apart descending to the ground.
So does that mean that there really is no place where we would find the impact of this meteorite on Earth because it broke up, or is there some place where at least a big rock hit the Earth?
There are no craters, but I guarantee you there are little pieces of meteorite scattered on the ground somewhere in Wisconsin, but no really big piece, no smoking crater.
You're just covering up the Martian spacecraft, though. Well, thanks very much, Wilfred, from the Marshall Space Center, NASA's Marshall Space Center in Philadelphia. And you can watch a couple of video clips of that meteor shooting across the Wisconsin sky at our website, npr.org.
This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from the Wallace Foundation, a source of ideas for expanding learning opportunities beyond the school day at wallacefoundation.org. From the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people, online at wtgrantfoundation.org.